In the Star Wars universe, the Rule of Two stands as a pivotal doctrine that shaped the Sith into the formidable power they became during the waning years of the Galactic Republic. Conceived by Darth Bane after the Sith Order's catastrophic defeat in the Jedi-Sith War, the Rule of Two imposed a structure of secrecy and efficiency upon the Sith. It dictated that only two Sith Lords could exist at any time, one master to embody the power of the dark side, and one apprentice to crave it. This ensured that the Sith would remain hidden, focused, and free from the self-destructive infighting that had doomed them in the past. However, what if Darth Bane never devised the Rule of Two? What if the Sith Order persisted as it had for generations, a chaotic collection of power-hungry individuals and warring factions? In such a timeline, the Sith would undoubtedly falter, failing to achieve the subtle dominance they attained under Bane's model. The Sith, prior to the Rule of Two, operated in large numbers, each aspiring to claim ultimate power for themselves. Their philosophy, built upon greed, ambition, and the pursuit of personal strength, naturally led to a constant state of infighting. Every Sith Lord viewed their contemporaries as rivals, threats to be eliminated or subjugated. This lack of unity was their greatest flaw, for while the Sith were individually powerful, their collective strength was diluted by endless internal conflict. Without Darth Bane's intervention, this volatile dynamic would have persisted, ensuring that the Sith would remain incapable of presenting a unified front against the Jedi or the Galactic Republic. The absence of the Rule of Two would mean that the Sith Order never learns from its repeated failures. The Jedi, though fewer in number than the Sith at times, thrived on cooperation, shared purpose, and selflessness. This made them a more effective force, capable of rallying together to confront external threats. By contrast, the Sith would be too consumed with fighting amongst themselves to focus on their true enemies. Without the restraint imposed by the Rule of Two, ambitious Sith Lords would scheme to overthrow their superiors while simultaneously guarding against their own apprentices. Masters would train legions of apprentices, each eager to supplant their teacher and claim the mantle of Dark Lord. This toxic cycle would perpetuate a culture of paranoia and betrayal, leaving the Sith perpetually fractured. Moreover, the sheer visibility of the Sith in such a state would ensure their eventual eradication. One of the greatest strengths of Bane's Rule of Two was its emphasis on secrecy. The Sith were reduced to a shadowy duo, hidden from the Jedi and able to operate in the darkness for centuries. This allowed the Sith to survive and manipulate galactic events without drawing the attention of their enemies. Without this doctrine, however, the Sith would remain in the open, their power struggles and rivalries playing out across Coruscant and other prominent systems. Their presence would not go unnoticed, and the Jedi would rally against them as they had in the past. With the Republic's resources and the Jedi Order's determination, the Sith would find themselves hunted down once more. The infighting that plagued the Sith also undermined their ability to enact long-term strategies. Under the Rule of Two, the Sith pursued their goals with patience and cunning. The master and apprentice worked in concert, each playing a specific role in a larger plan. The master embodied wisdom and experience, guiding the apprentice and teaching them the ways of the dark side. The apprentice, driven by ambition, honed their strength and eventually surpassed their master, ensuring that the Sith Order continued to evolve. This cycle allowed the Sith to cultivate power incrementally, biding their time until they could strike. Without the Rule of Two, however, the Sith would lack this discipline. Each Sith Lord would pursue their own agenda, seeking immediate power rather than investing in long-term goals. Their schemes would clash, sabotaging one another and preventing any meaningful progress. The Sith's failure to unite would also undermine their ability to harness the full potential of the dark side. While the dark side of the Force offers immense power, it also demands sacrifice and focus. The Rule of Two ensured that this power was concentrated in the hands of the strongest individuals. With only two Sith existing at any given time, the dark side's energy could flow more freely to them, allowing them to wield it with unparalleled potency. Without this limitation, however, the dark side would be spread thin among countless Sith, diminishing its overall effectiveness. The Sith would remain powerful, but they would never achieve the same level of mastery as individuals like Darth Sidious or Darth Vader, whose strength was a product of the Rule of Two's concentrated power. The Sith's inability to organize would also impact their influence over galactic affairs. Under the Rule of Two, the Sith operated from the shadows, manipulating political systems and sowing discord to weaken their enemies. This subtle approach allowed them to gain control of the Galactic Republic without the Jedi even realizing it. Without the Rule of Two, the Sith would lack the discipline and patience to enact such strategies. Their ambitions would remain focused on personal glory rather than collective victory. Instead of infiltrating political institutions and working to undermine the Republic from within, the Sith would wage open wars, drawing the ire of the Jedi and the Republic's military forces. While they might achieve short-term victories, their inability to present a united front would ultimately lead to their downfall. Furthermore, without the Rule of Two, the Sith would fail to cultivate a legacy. One of the doctrine's greatest strengths was its emphasis on succession. By ensuring that a master always trained a single apprentice, the Sith preserved their knowledge and traditions, passing them down through generations. This allowed the Sith to evolve, adapting to changing circumstances and refining their understanding of the dark side. Without this structure, however, the Sith's teachings would become fragmented. Each Sith Lord would train multiple apprentices, each interpreting the dark side in their own way. Over time, the Sith's philosophy and knowledge would become diluted, leading to a loss of coherence and direction. The Sith would splinter into countless factions, each claiming to represent the true Sith order. This fragmentation would weaken the Sith, preventing them from achieving their ultimate goal of galactic domination. The Jedi, meanwhile, would exploit this weakness. Unlike the Sith, the Jedi were united by a shared purpose and a common understanding of the Force. While individual Jedi might disagree on certain matters, they were bound by their commitment to the light side and the preservation of peace. This unity gave the Jedi a significant advantage over the Sith, whose divisions left them vulnerable to coordinated attacks. Without the Rule of Two, the Sith would find themselves unable to resist the Jedi's superior organization and resources. The Jedi would systematically dismantle the Sith Order, eliminating their leaders and scattering their followers. Over time, the Sith would become little more than a footnote in galactic history, remembered only as a cautionary tale of the dangers of unchecked ambition and internal strife. In this alternate timeline, the Sith's greatest weakness, their inability to cooperate, would prove to be their undoing. Without Darth Bane's vision, the Sith would remain trapped in a cycle of self-destruction, their ambitions constantly undermined by their own nature. The Rule of Two was not merely a doctrine. It was a solution to the fundamental flaws of the Sith Order. By limiting the Sith to two individuals, Bane ensured that their power was concentrated, their teachings preserved, and their strategies focused. Without this structure, the Sith would falter, unable to overcome the very weaknesses that define them. Their dreams of galactic conquest would remain unfulfilled, and the Jedi would continue to reign as the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy. At its core, the Rule of Two was a necessary evolution for the Sith, a recognition that their survival required discipline, patience, and unity. Without it, the Sith would be little more than a collection of warlords, consumed by their own greed and arrogance. Their power would burn brightly but briefly, extinguished by the very chaos they embraced. The galaxy would be spared the terror of individuals like Darth Sidious, but it would also be denied the dark brilliance of the Sith's cunning schemes. In the end, the Sith's refusal to adapt would ensure their place as a failed ideology, forever overshadowed by the unity and resolve of the Jedi. The Sith's failure to adopt the Rule of Two would not only diminish their chances of galactic domination, but also prevent the rise of individuals capable of wielding power on the scale of Palpatine or Darth Vader. One of the key strengths of the Rule of Two was that it created an evolutionary process for Sith Lords. A master, by nature of the dark side, always needed to be cautious of their apprentice. The apprentice's ambition forced them to grow stronger, constantly seeking ways to surpass their teacher. Simultaneously, the master would have to remain vigilant, honing their own power to ensure they remained in control. This dynamic produced an unrelenting cycle of growth, where only the most cunning and powerful Sith would emerge victorious. Without such a system, the Sith would lack this refinement. Instead, the Sith would become stagnant, bogged down by the same power struggles that plagued their ranks for millennia. Instead of one apprentice surpassing a master through strength, entire legions of apprentices would rise up in rebellion, their infighting culminating in unnecessary slaughter. In this way, the dark side's potential would be wasted on petty rivalries. While the Rule of Two created a disciplined process for cultivating Sith power, its absence would ensure that no single Sith Lord ever reached the peak of their abilities. The Sith Order would remain a fractured mess of middling warriors, far from the terrifying dominance achieved by the likes of Darth Sidious. Additionally, without the Rule of Two, the Sith would fail to mask their existence from the Jedi. Darth Bane understood that secrecy was essential to the Sith's survival. The Jedi had proven time and again that they could overcome the Sith when the Dark Lords were exposed and vulnerable. The Jedi Order's commitment to peace and justice gave them a degree of moral clarity that the Sith could not replicate. While the Sith fed off their anger and ambition, the Jedi operated with unity and purpose. Without the cloak of secrecy, the Sith would inevitably be discovered. Their wars of succession, their internal betrayals, and their lust for conquest would shine like a beacon in the Force. The Jedi would sense their presence and mobilize against them. Unlike during Bane's era, when the Sith were nearly wiped out by the Jedi, a large-scale Sith Order would have no chance of survival. The Jedi, armed with experience from their past victories, would crush the disorganized Sith with surgical precision. Jedi strike teams would infiltrate their strongholds, targeting Sith leaders and dismantling their power structures. In a matter of decades, the Sith would be hunted to extinction once more. Without the discipline and patience that Bane instilled through the Rule of Two, the Sith would remain incapable of outlasting the Jedi Order's superior strategy and organization. Furthermore, the Sith's inability to unite under a common vision would extend beyond their military failures. In Darth Bane's philosophy, the Sith sought to control the galaxy not through brute force alone, but through manipulation and subversion. Palpatine, as a product of the Rule of Two, exemplified this approach by orchestrating the collapse of the Republic from within. His mastery of political manipulation allowed the Sith to achieve what centuries of brute warfare had failed to accomplish. Without the Rule of Two, however, the Sith would lack the subtlety required to achieve such a victory. Their infighting would prevent them from pursuing long-term plans, and their preference for immediate power would blind them to the value of patience. The Sith's chaotic nature would also undermine their ability to inspire loyalty among their followers. While many Sith Lords commanded armies, these armies were often temporary, bound together only by fear or promises of power. Without the Rule of Two, the Sith would continue to operate in a manner that discouraged true loyalty or unity. Generals, acolytes, and apprentices would constantly conspire to overthrow their masters, ensuring that no Sith warlord could maintain control for long. Their armies would fracture, their followers would defect, and their influence would crumble. This inability to build lasting empires would ensure that the Sith remained a fleeting threat rather than a dominant force. The galaxy would see them not as an existential danger, but as a collection of squabbling warlords whose ambitions amounted to little more than destructive wars. The Jedi and the Republic, while wary of the Sith, would view them as a manageable problem, one that could be crushed with enough force. This perception would only embolden the Jedi, who would strike decisively whenever the Sith re-emerged. Without the Rule of Two, the Sith would lack the tools to survive such assaults, their forces too divided to resist a unified enemy. In this alternate timeline, the Sith's greatest weapon, their cunning, would be lost. The Rule of Two transformed the Sith from a disorderly rabble into a disciplined, calculated force. By ensuring that only the strongest survived, Bane's doctrine elevated the Sith to a level of power that their predecessors could only dream of. Without this system, the Sith would remain prisoners of their own hubris, their ambitions forever sabotaged by their inability to work together. Their legacy would be one of failure, defined by internal strife and missed opportunities. In the end, the Sith's refusal to adapt would ensure their demise. The dark side offered them immense power, but without the Rule of Two to harness and direct that power, the Sith would burn themselves out. They would wage wars against one another, bleed their resources dry, and expose themselves to their enemies. The Jedi, united by their principles, would ultimately prevail, leaving the Sith a scattered and defeated remnant. The galaxy would be spared the rise of Darth Sidious and the terror of the Galactic Empire, but it would also be deprived of the Sith's singular capacity for shaping destiny. Without the rule of two, the Sith would remain a cautionary tale, an order consumed by its own greed, incapable of achieving the very power it so desperately sought.